morning. My name is Warframe. This is an interview on victory gatekeeping. Are you interested in answering a few questions?
Yes, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right. So for the first question, we want to know when you first started, when you first joined the Souls community.
That's a fun one. So, long story short, my foray into the Souls community and games as a whole is a bit weird. So, this is back whenever Dark Souls, or not even Dark Souls, Demon Souls had came over here. So it originally started in Japan, and then it came over here. So, I was in. What did we have with it? It was just one of our stores, and I had spotted it, and I was just like, my friend says, "Oh yes, this game's very hard," and I was just like, right, I picked it up, and got my ass kicked, and traded it in 2 days later. And then 2 to 3 years after that, I picked up Dark Souls, and then that's whenever it really kicked off, because then once I beat Dark Souls, then I went back to Demon Souls and beat it. So I did. So pretty much around the very start of the Soul, when basically mine kicked off during Dark Souls 1. So it did.
What got you interested in the Souls community? Out of curiosity.
What got me interested though? Whenever I asked my friends how to beat Ornstein and Samo in Dark Souls 1, they told me to get good. Yeah, that was that. If you're looking the first major answer to anything, yeah, that was it.
When did you first see the Souls community's toxic side?
The really toxic side only really came out in Elden Ring. I've seen the toxic side of Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, but the absolute truly toxic side only really came into play during Elden Ring.
So you only ever really noticed it a lot in Elden Ring.
No, I noticed it in Dark Souls. I noticed it in Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, in both the co-op, the PvE side and the PvP side. I noticed it in all three games. It was just it dominated. The toxicity just flowed during Elden Ring. How would you even describe the toxicity? It was like, the way that I look at it, right? So whenever it comes to the toxicity of things, right? The way that I look at it is I am a Dark Souls veteran. I've been in the Souls community since Dark Souls 1. So I know what we had to deal with back then, but then you had all of the new players coming in and doing it differently, but then that was because they're using the tools that Elden Ring give them. And then basically that's whenever the toxicity just spewed out of every orifice. So it did.
Can I say with the streaks? It was a lot of new people, like a lot. It was a lot more than new people than the older people in the Souls community.
There was definitely a massively new influx of people. So there was that is without a shadow of a doubt. There was definitely a massive influx of new people, but in saying that, it could be down to the people as well, because realistically people should do their research on games before they get them. But Elden Ring just seemed to be a massive outlier, because all of a sudden there was a massive influx of new players. Absolutely massive.
And that still is very confusing to me. This is a weird one. Have you ever been a quote-unquote victim of victory gatekeeping in the Souls community?
Right, in terms of PvP in terms of PvE or PvP, because I have suffered from both sides of it, so I have.
Both.
Both, right? If we're gonna go PvE, the first time I got severely gatekeeped was whenever I was fighting Ornstein and Smo. I was stuck on them for a solid 5 hours, and I asked my friends, "How did you beat them?" And my friend's simple reply was, "Get good." No tips, no actual advice on how to beat them. It was just get good. So I followed their advice and got good. In terms of PvP, that would have been Dark Souls 3. Because Dark Souls 1 was just a backstab fest, Dark Souls 2 was broken as fuck, and Dark Souls 3 is whenever the skill level actually became something.
What was your worst case of victory gatekeeping in Dark Souls 3 in terms of PvP?
In terms of PvP, it was after the Ring City DLC came out with all the we'd already learned to deal with some of the weapons, but then no, actually that's a fuck. Sorry, it's an interview. I can't swear. That's a lie. No, the biggest one was dealing with the Karthus curved sword. That was the biggest gatekeeping Bolshevik I could come up with, because the Karthus curved sword was if anybody's played Dark Souls 3 PvP, pre-nerf Karthus curved sword anybody will know what I'm talking about. The weapon was a menace. Basically, imagine Nagi Keep a spinning slash only on steroids. And if you couldn't deal with it, well, you were basically you're basically bottom the barrel, because apparently the gatekeeping community really loved the sword, and if you couldn't deal with it, you weren't good. But then whenever you discovered that you could actually beat it, because a little thing called hyper armor, then they got even more saucy on it, so they did.
I actually was not. I never started playing Dark Souls games until 2022, so I had no idea. Well, not 2022, like 2020, 2021. But I had no idea about any of the PvP and stuff until like my first playthrough ended of Dark Souls 3.
No, it was very, 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 like as says, it was very niche, because you had, in terms of Dark Souls 1, you had the standard of, Dark Souls 1, you had the fight clubs, invasions, and the forest. That was it in Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 2, you had the Iron Keep and the Colosseums, and invasions. As the rule for the Iron Keep went, if you can't stick the heat, get out of the keep. And then you had Dark Souls 3, which it royally took off, because they implemented 6 players in Scholar of the First Sin for Dark Souls 2, and then that followed over to Dark Souls 3, and then that is whenever fight clubs blew up. And basically, if you were looking for the best of the best players, you went into fight clubs. So you did. Because back in I have to say back in them days, because unfortunately it's true, it became a lot more of a spectator sport than actual fighting, so it did. But regardless, the gatekeeping was still a thing, and basically you got called out for being bad very quickly.
It's a definite issue. Thank you for the reminder. A few more questions before we get into the more scenario-based questions.
All right.
How do you feel about people who played the Souls games, more specifically Elden Ring? Through their first playthrough was with mods that changed the base fundamentals of the game. Like, for example, seamless co-op, which changes a lot about how the game works in terms of co-op.
Yeah, no. I'm a firm believer in just saying no, because you're destroying the initial experience that was intended. So you are. Yes, you're exploring it with friends. I understand that. But regardless, at the base of Elden Ring, it is a single player game. If you removed summons from it, if you removed that entire concept from it, you're gonna have to deal with it by yourself. So no, I still adamantly believe that your first playthrough should be by yourself. Blind, completely blind, and by yourself. That's a personal opinion of mine, probably a hot take at this stage of the game. But no, if you're going to do your first ever playthrough, do it by yourself and do it blind.
And that's perfectly fair. Right, now this is the point where we get into the quote-unquote scenario-based questions. Like, let me start. Do you think it's victory gatekeeping if someone plays through the entire game with a cheese build, say pre-patched Comet Azure, and then they have very bad opinions on the game, such as like it was bad, it was too easy, it was too difficult, something like that?
Right. The best way I can describe this is, and I'm going to get a lot of slack for this because it's a loaded question and I'm going to give you a loaded answer, so I am, right? If you play through the game, right, now, quite frankly, you're not going to discover, if you're just playing the game by yourself blind, you're not going to naturally discover that Bleed or Frostbite or Comet Azure are initially broken. You're not going to discover this. But if you go out of your way to make any of these builds and then claim that the game is easy, I am sorry, but you have just cheated yourself out of an experience and you're bad at the game. Because you literally just looked up what's overpowered and you have just spoiled the game for yourself. No, I do not believe you beat the game. If you're saying that you beat the game and you used any of those three methods or any other cheesy ass methods that you can think of, no, you're not even in the conversation, so you're not. Because I've seen the way that people play, so I've seen what they do, I know how they react. The second they get stuck, they look for an answer, and immediately they're going to find the answer, and then they're going to spec into that answer. I am sorry, but no. You did not finish the game, you're not even in the same ballpark.
That's fair. Do you think it's fair to gatekeep someone who got carried through the entire game, such as being just taken through the entire game by a couple of overleveled friends?
Oh yeah, gatekeep them to fuck. Get the fuck out of the game. Sorry, I know I'm not meant to swear, but no, no. If you're having your friends carry you through the entire way through the game and you did not experience the game for yourself, don't play the game. Bugger off. If you're going to come to me with a conversation, you're not even in the conversation if you've been carried. That now, in saying that could be the Souls veteran coming out in me, because whenever I played the game, I played Dark Souls. Bearing in mind, I finished. If nobody actually knows about, likely odds is nobody knows about this, but whenever Dark Souls 1 was initially released, being it at its most difficult, so there was no patches released. This is on the 1.0 version of the game, right? The co-op and invasions didn't work, right? So if you got stuck, you had to get good, right? And this is where I believe that the gatekeeping argument comes from, right? It is simply down to the factor of anybody who's played pre-patched Demon Souls, pre-patched Dark Souls 1, we had to suffer through everything. And simply because you decide to get two phantoms to come and help you bully a boss basically makes us feel cheated, because we actually went and done it by ourselves, whereas we feel cheated because you decided that, nah, boss is too hard, I'm just going to get my friends to beat the boss for me. At that stage, you didn't achieve anything. You didn't actually do what the game intended you to do, Basically, the way that these games are designed, particularly because it's Miyazaki's way of making games, basically it's victory through suffering. You learn to actually have thick skin for the game, and you win via suffering, which then bolsters the actual achievement and the satisfaction of gaining that achievement for yourself. So no, if you came into Elden Ring and then ended up having 2 friends, over-leveled friends, to come and help you, no, you're not even in the conversation. Get out. So yes, I actually, now to think about it, I actually am a proprietor of gatekeeping.
At least you answered one of the questions before I even got to it.
Oh, sorry. What one?
I was gonna ask,
what
have you ever been the one to do the victory gatekeeping? I was like, oh, never mind, I got my answer.
Outright, I'm not even going to deny that. Outright, yes, I have done gatekeeping in the past. Outright. I'll let you get to your next questions, because I could go off on one hell of a rant, and then it doesn't turn into an interview anymore. It's just I'm going to rant and I'm going to answer every question you have by accident.
That's fair too.
And the last thing you need me to do is rant.
I have a few more questions, just a few. Do you think it's fair to victory gatekeep someone who went straight to max level and then brags about how easy the game is, or how difficult the game is?
If you're complaining that the game's easy, basically you just cheated yourself a victory, so you have, because that's not how the game was intended to be played. So it wasn't. If you literally just pick up a rune farming spot, go and farm it to max level, and then blitz the game, then, dude, again, you're not even part of this conversation, because you didn't play the game in what I would consider legitimately. Basically, via natural progression. No, you've cheated. You have legitimately cheated the natural progression of the game itself. So by cheating the natural progression of the game, you have now cheated yourself a victory that you did not deserve in the first place. Now, if you're complaining if you're at max level and you're complaining that the game is too hard, then that is simply a skill issue. Get good, because there is absolutely no reasoning for you to be struggling if you are at max level on a base game playthrough. There is no reason for you to be struggling. So again, in that scenario, I'm going to politely say, get good.
Again, that's also fair. I was going to ask one question ahead of time, but I'll wait till the end of the actual interview. Do you I think you already answered this one, but do you think it's fair to victory gatekeep someone who leeches off other people's work, also known as, well, basically summoning people to play the game for them?
Again, yes. Gatekeep them. You're not even in the conversation at that stage. If you're going to turn to me and say, yes, I beat the game, I'm going to ask you how you beat the game, and if you turn to me and say, oh, my friend beat everything for me, and goes, no, you're not even in the conversation, get out. I actually have, and in fairness, I have actually done that. I have actually chewed people out for that. Because, in my opinion, that is completely and utterly disgraceful. Would you like an example?
Sure. I need this to go on as long as I can.
Oh, I can go. Dear, I can go on for as long as you need me to go on, so I can. Quite frankly, I'll give you 2 instances where I blew up at someone, right? I'll give you 2 instances.
All right.
The first instance was, fun fact, me out invading. So it was, and at the start of the game, I was, what was I doing? I was invading at level 30, just testing out a few gimmicks, and ran into a host and a phantom. Phantom was over leveled, so I was like, right, okay, this is going to be fun to deal with. Of course, full bull goats, dual naginatas, you get the general gist of it. And I was just like, right, okay, and then magically the phantom was running around in Malekith's armor, and I'm like, dude, you're the star of the game. Why do you have that? And a Rivers of Blood. And I'm less like, am I missing something here? So I proceeded to message him afterwards, and I was just, well, the Phantom wasn't too happy with me yeeting him off a cliff, so he wasn't, and he called me cheap and chicken for that, and I was just like, dude, what level are you? Oh, yeah, I'm level 700, yeah, dude, you deserve to fall off that cliff. And the host, I asked him, goes, is this your first playthrough? And he goes, yeah, my friends helped me through it, and I was just like, get bent. Sorry, dude, like, I literally blew up on him on a message. I was just like, dude, you are an actual fucking disgrace. Sorry for the swearing, by the way, but you're a disgrace. I wasn't in a good mood that day, but I blew up on him. And then, funnily enough, the person that you interviewed me beforehand, Streaks, I was helping one of his friends play through the game. He got lost on his way to Malekith. But what had me really confused was the fact that he had 2 Nagikibas and Malekith's armor and Radahn's armor, because he was using a combination of the 2, but whenever I was helping him make his way through the game, he hadn't beaten Malekith or Radahn. And I was just like, did you get this gear dropped to you? And he's like, I did. It looked cool. And I was like, no. And he's like, what do you mean? And he goes, I asked him, what talismans does he have? He had the Air Tree Favor +2, which he couldn't have had access to, and the Great Jar's Arsenal, which he also couldn't have had access to due to the fact that he didn't even have half of Caelid unlocked. And I was like, dude, I'm not helping you anymore. And he was like, oh, but why? And I goes, because you have had external help that makes me very angry at you. And he was like, oh, but why? He goes, because you're not experiencing the game the way it was intended. And he goes, yeah, I mean, he goes, no, you're not. You're using so many pieces of late game gear, as well as gear that you statistically cannot have. So no, I'm not doing this here. You can find somebody else to help you. Okay, probably a little bit rough on my part, but still, though, that to me that is outright disgraceful behaviour. Your maidenless behaviour, if you want to use an Elden Ring reference. So yeah, that was fun. Yeah, now that I think about it, I actually am a preparator of this stuff, so I'm.
I still have a little bit more time, so if you have any more interesting examples, I'm open to hear them.
In fairness, I could go on. I could legitimately go on for quite a while. Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne. I have examples out the arse. Dark Souls 1, if you really do want to play that, there is whenever you're doing low-level invasions and they're running around full Havels or full Ornsteins or full Smoes. Yeah, that's always a fun thing to see, so it is, and that there's normally me, these were back during the good old Xbox days whenever voice messaging and hate mail was at its most prevalent because you were dealing with nothing but 2-year-olds. But yeah, no, normally that was the idea, that was similar, but then Dark Souls 1, the initial release of Dark Souls 1 was substantially different because, so not the remaster, to be very specific, not the remaster, because the remaster changed how the co-op and PvP worked. This is back during the Xbox 360 days of Dark Souls. Basically, the way that it worked was you could have any leveled weapon at any level. Obviously, this is a foreign concept to a lot of Elden Ring players, but back in Dark Souls 1, you could have a +20 weapon at level 1. So all of a sudden, you have level 1 people running around with weapons that can one-shot you at level 1 if you're doing low-level invasions as a comparison. So that there, I literally carved somebody up because he hadn't learned how to backstab yet. So what I politely did, just to demonstrate that you're not very good at the game, is I just decided to chain backstab him bare-handed to death. And he called me a cheater for that, and yet no more than an invasion beforehand he had one-shot me with a +20 lightning falchion. And he goes, and I was like, dude, you got your friend to drop you a +20 lightning falchion. You do not get that until damn near the end of the game. Do me a favour, get good, you scrub. he didn't take that too well. Dark Souls 2 wasn't too bad. No, actually, Dark Souls 2 was really bad because you had. I remember doing early game invasions, and then this is whenever soul memory was a thing. So it made it a little bit more difficult to do early game invasions, so it did. Made it actually a good bit more difficult. But whenever you invade somebody in the Forest of Giants wielding dual ice rapiers with magic infusions on them, you're immediately going to be like, excuse me, I am going to cheese the life out of you because you're nothing but an undefined scrub. And yes, he was also at the start of the game. I have just noticed that there's a lot of people that really do not like challenge in these games, so they are. Oh, I also remembered something. I forgot that all of these things were actually had a name back then. It was called being a damn twink. So it was. Basically, being a twink was severely frowned upon no matter what part of the community you were part of, either being a part of the co-op community, the PvP community, or just the general, just one to play the game community. Being a twink was heavily frowned upon. So it was. And if anybody who doesn't know what a twink is basically somebody who is very early game with very late game gear. Do you want me to continue this run? Because I can go all day.
Sure.
Oh Jesus Christ! Dark Souls 3 I don't think was actually too bad because I think. Oh no! Now I remember a specific one from Dark Souls 1. Why did I remember this? A very right. So in Dark Souls 1 there was a very very specific way to twink in Dark Souls 1. So there was right, and that there was using castings. So it was. So everybody knows Dark Souls 1 magic was overpowered. Everybody knows Faith wasn't as overpowered, but there was one very specifically overpowered miracle in Dark Souls 1. And that there being Wrath of the Gods, which you could obtain by level, not so much, naturally obtaining it would have taken you a little bit longer than you might think. But because once you learn Dark Souls 1, you can get access to things a lot earlier than you might think. But because between a combination of the talisman not requiring an awful lot of faith and Wrath of the Gods having a relatively low faith requirement, you could literally blow up an entire trio in 2 casts. So you could, making it very easy to twink kill people. And then also in Dark Souls 1, you also had the crystallization, the 10 crystallization catalyst, which basically halved your castings but more than doubled your damage, making a soul arrow basically damn near close to a one shot that early in the game. But whenever you're invading people and they're running around with this gear, normally it tends to end in toxic bickering because I actually put the effort into playing the game, whereas they just got it dropped to them and then proceeded to steamroll the game. I hate twinks. And this is coming from a twink back in the days. So it is. Yeah, absolutely. I can understand why there's gatekeeping. What's the next question? Before I really go off.
I think that honestly is pretty much all the questions. Do you have any
Right.
questions or any concerns at all?
It's. I'll give you a final anecdote. How about that?
All right.
Coming from a Souls veteran who's been playing Souls games for the past. I have the dates here. The past, say, 13, coming up 14 years. And I've played every Souls game. Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. As far as I'm aware, I haven't missed any. As far as I'm aware, I haven't missed any. But I have played them all. So I have. And I've normally played them on release. So I have. Whenever it comes to gatekeeping is justified within certain reasonings. As says, Warframe has asked very specific questions that have very specific answers. Well, not very specific answers, but they have You get the general thought process that I'm going with.
Yeah, I
But the
do.
thing is that the thing is that I do have to bring up is yes, the games give you tools to be able to beat the bosses given to you. Yes, I understand that, but a lot of the gatekeeping started in Dark Souls One. A lot of the mentality towards gatekeeping, a lot of mentality, the mentality towards gatekeeping developed in Demon Souls and Dark Souls One. So it did because of the reputation of the games alone, right? The reputation of the games justified them as, in their years of release, be it Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, maybe not as much Dark Souls 2, but they were all recommended as the most difficult games of their time. So they were. So the achievement of beating these games was what the veterans strived for, because in Dark Souls 1, in the Dark Souls games, we didn't have spirit summons to help us. But at the same time, though, because Dark Souls 1 developed the get good attitude, it carried over into the rest of the games. If you couldn't beat it, the simple answer was get good. So it was, because there was certain bosses that no amount of leveling was ever going to help you with. Dark Souls 1, brilliant example, is Smorn Ornstein. And then you had the DLC on top of that there, which added Artorias and Manus, Calamite, and the Sanctuary Guardian, which dwarfed anything that was ever in the base game. So it did. It was the final mentality of it was is if you can't beat it, get good. Learn the boss and fight the boss and get good. You literally had two options and only two options in the early days of Dark Souls, and that was either be patient and learn the boss, or grit your face up against the boss until you beat the boss. Right, I'm going to say shameless plug because I'm going to say the exact same thing that I did whenever I fought Bale. Insert meme. Curse you, Bale! Yes, you get the idea. I've developed the mentality of I will grate my face off a boss until I win. So I will. That's my entire mentality whenever it comes to it. But that is because that mentality has been ingrained in me because of Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1. That mentality has been ingrained in me. If you do not beat the boss by yourself, you do not deserve the victory. And I still maintain that. I still maintain that same mentality because on my initial play of Elden Ring, I actually copped out. I actually ended up having to resort to Mimic Tier to beat Melania, Moog, Godfrey, and Radahn on my first ever playthrough of Elden Ring. But since then, I have got good at the game and have went back and soloed each of these bosses without any gimmicks, might I add. But that was for my own sense of pride within, as being a Souls veteran. That was my own sense of pride. I think if we boil it down to the base premise, the gatekeeping comes from players that have an immense amount of pride within their own skill level. And what I mean by that there is simply down to the factor of if you solo, like it's, do you want to actually the perfect example of getting good is, funnily enough, Let Me Solo Her. He is the perfect example of getting good. He graded his face off of that boss that many times that he can now solo her by himself for other people. And that is how he gained his reputation. That was his own pride. It's the difference in pride as a gamer, I believe it is, because Let Me Solo Her is actually the perfect example because his own pride would not let him lose. So he proceeded to beat Melania and fight Melania countless times until he had mastered the fight. Whereas you have the complete opposite side where people are going to summon or use spirit ashes to make the fight easier. Let Me Solo Her done it the hard way. So gatekeeping is literally down to one's pride. I could actually see. Oh God, I just jumped down the rabbit hole. This is not good. it is a matter. It is actually down to a matter of pride. So it is. If you have had people help you, you have no pride in your skill as a gamer. Well, Souls gamer, we'll say, within the Souls community itself. If you have had to go and get yourself help, be it spirit ashes, be it co-opers, be it anything of that category, if you're not willing to do it by yourself, then within the Souls community, you're seen as prideless. So you are. Whereas then you have legends like Let Me Solo Her, whose pride would not let them be beaten. So you do. And that is the difference between people who have pride and don't have pride. And then at that stage, that's where I believe that the gatekeeping comes from. Because at the end of the day, these games are designed to be challenging. And that is the exact reason to why it has developed a toxic player base, is because anybody who has soloed the game has the pride to say that they soloed the game. So they do. And that is how I see it. So yeah, I think the whole gatekeeping shenanigans is down to one's pride, and no harm. And if anybody's watched my content, I can be a prideful twat at times. So I can. My pride will not let me slip up, and if I do slip up, my pride kicks me in the ass. So yes, I do believe it is down to it is just an issue of pride. I do believe that is how it works.
And once again, that is fair. Well,
What's your opinion on it? Just to add to this here, what would be your opinion on it?
I think the victory gatekeeping is very situational. Like I admit, I do sometimes do it. Like Kai
In
Cenat,
what
for
way?
example, he
Eh?
started playing the game, I guess what you call normal, and
Yes.
ended this first playthrough with a Rivers of Blood and Blood Nagakiba
Oh,
because chat
Jesus
exists,
Christ.
and then he beat the DLC with the Blood Fiend arm with just only hitting R2. So
Oh.
I have mixed feelings on that, like because he I don't even remember what he was playing with to start. All I know is he ended with stuff I know chat told him to use. Because I don't think he would have even found either of the weapons he ended the base game and DLC with if chat didn't tell him.
Yeah. See, that there's the thing is I do particularly remember on this one. Here, I could tie this in real quick because on one of the videos that I recently put up, a dude is trying to gatekeep me, so he is, and it's fucking hilarious. There is currently a guy in my chat or in my comments trying to gatekeep me, so he is, and this is over the head of me using the ancient meteor greatsword. So it is, right? In your opinion, do you classify that weapon as cheesy?
No.
Right? This dude comments on the video saying, "Dude, you're using the cheesiest weapon in the game," and I'm like, "What are you talking about? The meteoric greatsword is not a cheesy weapon. I'm sorry." But then he doesn't reply to me because I give him a smart ass reply saying, "Gotta love the jar cannon cheese." I give him a smart ass reply because a stupid question is going to get or a stupid K to use, and then he replies to Streaks, but he doesn't reply to me, which I take mild offense to. Any of them. But would you like to play on easy mode or would you prefer a challenge? Don't play dumb. And I'm like, this is a PvP related short. What are you talking about? Easy mode or prefer a challenge? Like, I need answers here. Like, what are you talking about? Actually, fun fact, Warframe, you commented on the exact same video.
Yep. I think I remember actually which one it was. Well, I don't remember the exact
Yeah.
video, but I remember the conversation.
Aye, you says who is Buddy teabagging? Same video. And I'm just like, who are you trying to gatekeep here, mate? Like, I sort of laugh because I don't, and this is another thing that I find funny, right? This is actually something that I do find funny, right? And I do believe this is an issue on the gatekeepers side of things. I don't think gatekeepers do their research into the people that they're gatekeeping. Does that make sense?
If that's so, thank you for taking time to do the interview.
You're very welcome. I had great fun doing it because I got to let some shite off my chest that I've been building up for ages. I was saving it for a video, but I figured whenever you asked for the interview, I was just like, oh yes, I can cut loose a little bit.
All right. Well, I will see you later. And once
See you
again,
later.
thank you for the interview.
You're very welcome. I had good fun with this too. Good luck, and I'll see you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.